In a year for LEGO Star Wars where we've seen a dark side Millennium Falcon, Jedi Bob Starfighter, and an R2-D2 with rubber ducky release, it's kind of wild that this here is still in contention for the most surprising release of the year. It's a deluxe collector's book and time capsule for the 25th anniversary of LEGO Star Wars, and when I found out about it a few months ago, I was hyped. I took a shot in the dark and guessed that it might cost $80. Boy, was I wrong. $150 for this book with time capsule. For reference, the most recent LEGO Star Wars visual dictionary costs just $25, so it's no surprise that many fans are having sticker shock when they hear this is $150. And because of that high price, it may not surprise you to learn that this might not sell very well. In fact, I went to the LEGO store on its release day right when the store opened. No one else was there to buy one, and the store didn't even have them on the shelves. A very nice employee had to go in the back room to get this out for me. LEGO doesn't even want you to buy this book for $150. So as I unbox the $150 LEGO Star Wars book, I just want to add that I do plan to make another video about this where I do a full read through, but this video is very specifically the review. So if you buy one, it comes in this plastic shrink wrap to protect it. Initial impressions. It feels nice, and I'm gonna get my fingerprints all over that. Oh boy. I don't know why, but I did not expect the back page to literally just be a piece of paper, but I will cherish this piece of paper for a long time to come. So on the front here, we've got the LEGO Star Wars logo, and that is embedded into the material there. Same with the name of the book, The Force of Creativity. And then you've got this very cool reflective UCS Millennium Falcon front and center. So that looks pretty cool. I like the front. You can already see all my fingerprints. What a shame. But there's the UCS AT-AT, another one of the greatest LEGO Star Wars sets of all time. Pretty aptly placed on the back. So opening it up, there we have it, the 2019 UCS Star Destroyer. So the Falcon, the AT-AT, and the Star Destroyer, three of the best original trilogy UCS sets ever made, unquestionably. So that looks great. So this looks like it's the cover of the actual book. Looks like we've got a tab here to pull it out. We'll get to that in a second because the inside of this is covered in the same like style art that the boxes for the 25th anniversary LEGO Star Wars sets are. So that's pretty cool. Makes a lot of sense. And that blue metallic color just looks really, really nice. But let's pull this tab, see if we can get this. This book is heavy. Holy crap. I mean, I knew that when I bought it at the store. So what is this tab doing? So it's pulling the time capsule and the book. I want to get the book without the time capsule because I want to get the book out of the way. We're coming back to the book. Just because I had to know, actually, there's the back of it. It has the 2021 R2-D2. Now, I gotta say, with this time capsule, I'm a little disappointed that it didn't include a minifigure. I think that would have been very fitting with something like this, but it has obviously gone in a bit of a different direction. So, looks like there's the front, there's the back, all done in that same blue metallic style that looks great. The time capsule here will hopefully have some pretty cool stuff. So all we have to do is open it up like this. There's nothing sealing it or anything. And it looks like it explains the contents on the left side. Ooh boy. All right. So as I'm looking at it here, I'm quite certain it's actually not in order of what you get on the right side of the time capsule, which is kind of a shame. You know, it would have been cooler, I guess, but I'll go through it in order. There's a lot of stuff in here. Item number one here is a preliminary version of the original LEGO Star Wars logo. I think the weirdest thing on here is maybe that Leia. She looks pretty far off from what Leia should look like or does look like in LEGO Star Wars. Maybe it's the black hair instead of the brown hair that's throwing me off. And the backside is literally just like a postcard back that says early version of LEGO Star Wars logo. So pretty neat item. Not something I'm like dying to display though. For the next item, you actually have to fold it together. It's a replica of the 1999 LEGO Star Wars Toy Fair invite, an item I actually happen to own the original of. I actually won it on a Goodwill auction. I know when I refresh, it's gonna be like $9,000. It ended! I won! No way! With it folded open here, you can see the full extent of the interior art that you can't really see when it's all folded together. So that's actually a pretty neat view to have, because I certainly was not going to pull my other one apart. Putting it together definitely takes a few minutes, but let's see it next to the original, because that's a cool comparison. So at a glance, if I asked you which is the really rare original Toy Fair invite and which one came with the book, you might not be able to tell super easily, but they are substantially different. LEGO did a decent job trying to stay true to the original, but there's just some quality differences, and of course, you'll see inside the main difference between the two that definitely differentiate these. But for a fan maybe that saw my video and knew it existed, or didn't know it existed, getting this is going to be pretty cool, I think, but it's just not the original. And so you'll see what I mean by that when we show the inside. But on the outside, the original on the left, the new one on the right, it looks pretty close. I feel like they didn't do a great job like rematching the exact like lighting conditions of the old one. Like there's a lot brighter streaks of light and the glow around the Lego logo is gone. So that's definitely different. The top side largely looks the same again with just different shading of colors, and you can see the cardboard is quite thinner on the new one when you look at it from the top down. There it is on the left. There are the differences on the right, and you can see on the bottom the copyright information has been changed up to include the year 2024 for the new one. And finally for the outside, we got the back panel, and you can see announcing what would go on to become their biggest partnership in Lego Star Wars for over 25 years now. You have a completely messed up X-Wing on the back with the wings in the complete wrong position. Like no one else has ever put their X-Wing wings like this again, yet this is how they announced Lego Star Wars. It's actually insane to me that this even got past some level of quality control, assuming it existed. But then again, knowing what I know about Lego and my experiences with them personally, just I guess it doesn't surprise me, but it might make you happy to know that the tradition continues, of course, staying true to the original. They kept the X-Wing just like that, or they reused the same exact image. I haven't really actually looked at these close enough to know if they are the same exact image. Maybe, let me stare at them. Hold on. Maybe this image looks a little blurrier to me, so maybe they did scan this in, but I do think it's like the exact same image. I think this is a good example. On the original, you can see Luke's face there. You can definitely see the eyes and the mouth, and then on the new one, you cannot really see his face. So either way, it's a lesser quality, but it's not something you're going to notice a lot. So those are the exterior shells, pretty close, but the inside is substantially different. Did they just... wait, did they forget to add the Lego logo? Like actually just forget to add it? Because it should definitely... There's no reason the Lego logo is not there, because you can see it there and there on the inside. We'll get to that. But I actually just noticed that. They definitely just forgot to add a Lego logo. Classic Lego Star Wars, what do you know? But yeah, I guess there's a missing Lego logo. They've added a 25th anniversary edition border. When it comes to the main text in white, what they did was remove the call for appointment and Lego showroom address at the New York Toy Fair, and they basically expanded all of the text through Just Imagine. So it went a little bit further. So it reads the same, except they took out the call for appointment and Lego showroom address. Inside of the original, they've got a physical Lego build made of real Lego plastic with a Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker figure holding lightsabers. And on the new one, you get a cardboard cutout of that very build, except it's way smaller in there. You may notice it takes up a lot less space inside compared to the original. Some collectors might find it worth their time to actually build out the display and put the actual build inside. Another thing that kind of bothers me is the lightsabers. They're both holding them upside down, and I'm sure they were physically built different, but my characters are kind of split on that. My Luke is holding one right side, and Darth Vader's is being held upside down. But even more importantly, the actual tips of the lightsaber blades on the end should not be squared off. They should actually be completely rounded off, because on the original Toy Fair invite, they actually had like basically prototype lightsabers. They were pieces cut from other pieces that had the rounded tips because they didn't have the lightsaber piece ready yet, I think. So I think that should have been represented in the picture there, and it wasn't. And I think that's disappointing, because it's a little piece of Lego Star Wars history that you only get with the original, that you could maybe have only ever known otherwise from my YouTube video about it, or I guess this video now. But I just feel like that cardboard cutout in there is, it's, you know, a little detail like that goes a long way towards like feeling like it truly was of its time, and it's lost to time. Oh, also on the original, there was basically like a sound box inside. That's not on the new one either. Mine doesn't work, so I'll never have that experience. But apparently when you opened the original one, if you got it back in 1999, it would have played like Star Wars music. I think whoever came up with this idea and tried to do it put a lot of love and care into it. They just, you know, didn't go all the way they could have. Here we've got a pencil sketch for a print advertisement. I've actually seen the real version of this ad, so if I can find it, I'll put it up on screen. But yeah, pretty cool little piece of art. Nothing too crazy though, especially coming off what we just saw. Next, we've got some development art for some hologram micro figures. The Palpatine and Leia have been in sets before. Meanwhile, the Clone Trooper and Darth Vader still unreleased to this day. But never say never, because the Leia did release in 2020 and this was drawn in 2009. So you never know, maybe in the future could be cool, but certainly don't expect it, I suppose. But yeah, pretty cool piece of art. Next, we've got the 2010 Toy Fair booklet, another item I actually own the original of, and again, is way more expensive, but pretty cool to see here. So on the inside, there's a pretty good like word collage there with some figures mixed in. But you can see most of the sets for the year on the wish list, and Anakin. We've got some very cool Clone Trooper art on this next page, Nadar Veb, General Grievous, Boba Fett, and then the minifigure drawings are always pretty cool. This is how they separate them by set. Let me see if I can get the next page here. Yeah, so they separate them by set and release time. So I think that's kind of how they do it behind the scenes. These are the exclusive minifigures for 2010. Not necessarily exclusive to the set they're in, but the set they're in is exclusive to the store it's released in. Then we have the set pictures for some of the January stuff there. Pretty dang cool. More of the January sets here. Also very cool to see. No freaking way. I don't know if the old book had this, but these are the preliminary pictures of these sets, except they don't have the watermarks on them. Holy crap. I got to check my other book real quick. So here's the original one that I own. You can see maybe a bit of a higher quality piece there with the reflection of the Vader compared to this, just kind of all one versus this. You can see much nicer. Also came with a white Boba Fett next to it, so that's pretty interesting. On the back of this, you can also like feel the Lego logo and the Star Wars logo. So yeah, this is a much nicer piece. But what I was going to say is, on the inside here, these are not the preliminary versions of these pictures. I think if you look at Plo Koon's astromech droid, it will show pretty easily. So there's Plo Koon's astromech droid there. And then this is the one from the Force of Creativity. And if we look to the back, that is a preliminary image of Plo Koon's starfighter. This is what I was hoping for out of this book. Now, I've seen these preliminary images before with the watermarks on them, so it's not really new to me to see these, but I suppose for the quality that they're in, it's pretty cool. You can see the Wampa is still kind of like a test mold. It's not in the proper white color yet. And then there is the turbo tank. You can see Ayla Secura with her white headpiece instead of the full color version. Definitely did not expect something different from the back of that book. So that's pretty cool. Not as nice as the original, but I mean, I think for many fans that are newer to Lego Star Wars and don't want to spend the money that something like this would cost, this is a pretty good replacement for that. Next, we have instructions for a make and take micro ghost. This would have been given out at like Toys R Us at the time. And yeah, I mean, I could care less about this in particular. It's honestly pretty lame, but maybe it's someone's cup of tea and someone gets some enjoyment out of it. But like, yeah, it's the least exciting item so far. This is an unproduced script for a Lego Star Wars talk show called Lego Star Wars Tonight. I don't know if it's any good or not. I suppose you can pause and read some if you want. Maybe there's a good joke in there for you. I don't think I'm really wanting to read this right now. Okay, I just happened to see something on this page that might be interesting. It says that they're working on a TIE Interceptor for 2014, but there was no TIE Interceptor released in 2014, so I wonder if that was a canceled set for that year. Very, very interesting. So yeah, maybe a little snippet there, but I don't know. Maybe it was just a stand-in set, but they did also release the B-Wing in 2014, so it would have been a very sensible set to have against it. Who knows? Next, we have an unreleased Star Destroyer poster from 2019, except I think it's kind of lame because this is basically the box art from the set, from like the side of the box. So like, I don't care at all. It's kind of lame. Perhaps the most interesting item to me included is this art for a Zam Wesell minifigure. Unfortunately, it wasn't created to make a physical minifigure. You can tell because it has a physical waist cape, Lego Star Wars. But it was made for Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. But yeah, I hope this becomes an official minifigure. This looks like a really good figure, again, with a physical waist cape. But could end up being something in the future. Who knows? They just haven't made a Zam Wesell figure since 2002, so wouldn't count on it. But yeah, this is pretty cool. This one's maybe worth framing, so I like it a lot. This one's definitely a neat item. I wish they had more of this in here instead of like the last thing we had. Here's our very last... What's wrong? Here's our very last item. It's the Lucasfilm Yoda fountain, except the legs on Yoda are not the same legs from the actual set that they gave to the Lucasfilm employees. So this is just not the correct instructions. That's just not how it works. And it's not even like authentic to the original version of the thing, you know? I feel like it should have retained that authenticity, but it doesn't. So I am right, but they actually address this on the contents page for the time capsule, and it says, note, the original set's Yoda minifigure used a leg element from another theme, which has been amended here. Obviously, the legs they put in the original version looked horrendous on Yoda and shouldn't have been there to begin with, but I do believe in the authenticity of stuff like this, and I feel like it should have stayed authentic to the original. But then again, if they stayed fully authentic to everything in this time capsule, we wouldn't have gotten those really clean, cool looks at those preliminary summer 2010 images. So it's a give and take thing there. So overall, for this $150 book, I'll give the time capsule a thumbs up. But for $150, I do wish we got like a physical Lego figure or something in here. Maybe like a George Lucas, who knows? But with all of those items out of the way, we can now focus on the book. Now, I want to give you my initial impressions and thoughts as I open this 312-page book for the first time. But remember, this video is specifically a review of the book and time capsule, and so I'm not going to be looking at every page during this video. Here's the inside cover. It looks like it's all that metallic blue brick that we've seen throughout this video already. And the next cover, it says The Force of Creativity, and it's got R2-D2 there, the same R2-D2 that we saw on the back of the book. So makes a lot of sense there. Next page, we got the X-Wing from 1999. All right, I like how we're starting. So I'm going to have to go through this book to review it. But, I don't think I want to give a play-by-play of every page here. But this is kind of what I'm hoping for $150, that we see a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff like this, some preliminary stuff, some stuff that we've just never seen. So this is definitely a good start to start here. And we've got our contents. So it looks like we'll run through a foreword, introduction, prologue, man, 3 little pre-things, and then a bunch of chapters, epilogue, and more. So this definitely promises to be a lengthy read. Let me give you some of the highlights. So that brings us into chapter 1 with the beginnings, and I've got some good notes for this chapter starting on page 44 here, and it's actually got some really cool behind-the-scenes stuff on the launch of the Phantom Menace. So here you can see the wall of toys that include toys that aren't necessarily just Lego Star Wars, but on the right side we've got the Lego Star Wars stuff, which is quite cool. On the next page, there's a pretty cool behind the scenes picture of Anthony Daniels in Billund, and there's a couple of like younger Lego Star Wars designers that you might recognize, like Jens and Henrik there, but the coolest part of the picture, frankly, to me, is the Boba Fett. It looks like an animated Lego Boba Fett picture for something, maybe some advertisement or something that I've never seen before. So that's kind of like some of the few highlights that I really got out of this book, was seeing some of that type of stuff. And unfortunately, there's not as much as I was hoping for. Now, this page does have a little bit more of that with some of these builds here, the alternate builds for Lego Star Wars sets that they explain ended in the early 2000s. But like a really cool unseen one here of an airplane from the X-Wing, which is really neat. There's a page covering the behind the scenes on set photography, and then a couple more pages along, we've actually got some very cool behind the scenes stuff on the original Toy Fair launch for Lego Star Wars, including that Toy Fair invite that we saw earlier in the video, as well as the actual setup at the 1999 Toy Fair, which is pretty cool to see. It's not too fancy looking. It definitely screams late 90s, but it's still very cool to see, and there's like a really cool like life-size battle droid built for it. Some neat stuff there. Big shout out, of course, to the massive Naboo starfighter. That's really cool to see. Now, chapter 2 is about making models, and this is kind of where my expectations start to go up for this book. I'm looking for some preliminary builds that we've never seen before, and this is a legendary image within the Lego Star Wars space, and somewhat for like Aliens Conquest fans. There's a couple unreleased Aliens Conquest sets back here, but that's kind of besides the point. In this image, you can see the original concept model for Yavin 4, of course, next to the 2008 Death Star, and this is actually a build that I have built myself and have in my collection, which is like amazing to have. There's also a wall of prototype builds, and unfortunately in this image it's cut off, and there's nowhere else in the book that it's going to show it. So unless you know the picture exists online, you wouldn't be able to see the rest of this, but it is a pretty well-known picture, which kind of makes this picture inclusion, while completely fitting for this, a little bit disappointing, because I would love to see an updated version of this. This picture is at least a decade old, I think, and so it's like, yeah, there's some really neat stuff there, but I've seen it before, and I wish I could see what a modern wall like this looks like with more recent prototype builds. But there's definitely some cool stuff, like a Watto bust. There's also an original UCS Slave 1 concept model. Of course, the final one looked much better than that. For many years, I looked at this picture and thought it was a prototype Endor, but if you actually pay attention, it's literally Kashyyyk. You can see a rock, you can see the Ornithopter, you can see the battle droids with the Kashyyyk trooper in front, so it's definitely Kashyyyk. It even says Kashyyyk in the front there, but yeah, unreleased playset. On the next page, there's of course a pretty good read, but there's this little logo for Lego Star Wars product development in 2010, and some of you guys may recognize this, but not realize where it's from. It's actually from a Lego Club TV like YouTube video where they went behind the scenes with Lego Star Wars to reveal the Mon Calamari cruiser in 2009, and they show this door that has this logo on it, and they're like, oh, you can't go in there. And so I love that this is here. I would love to get a good scan of this and actually print it and put it on my door, because I've always really loved that thing, and just it's a piece of my personal history for Lego Star Wars that I really, really love. Now, one of the issues I think this book has is it presents itself as this kind of all-access book that should be giving you a great behind-the-scenes look, and it mentions things like a sketch model of the secret rebel base on Yavin 4 had been sitting in the design department for years, eventually was released as a 75365 Yavin 4 rebel base in 2023. And yes, that's the set that we got, but they don't actually show a picture of the sketch model of Yavin 4. And in this particular case, I don't really care. I showed it to you on the other page, and we've seen it in previous LEGO Star Wars visual dictionaries, but there are other cases in this book, like earlier on page 15, they reference a 1998 prototype of the Imperial Shuttle and AT-AT, and we don't get to see those prototypes. And so I feel like this is a review, really. You know, one of the places that this book falls short is providing some of that imagery that it absolutely should be providing for $150. I mean, that's the type of thing massive fans like myself that would want to buy this book would be looking for out of this book. Of course, all the reading is fun and fine and dandy, but part of it is that behind the scenes look that includes the visual, not just the text. And again, another small thing, it's a nice behind the scenes picture they include, but this is something we've seen before, and so for $150, you know, I'd like to see new stuff. There's another image there, but doesn't really give us anything. I thought this page was a pretty good inclusion, talking a lot about the scale and stability of the sets, as well as some of the play functions that some of them need, and they specifically call out that, of course, things need to be authentic to the Star Wars universe. I also really love this page. You get a behind-the-scenes look at the Falcon box art, where they've still got the stick holding up the Falcon at its weird angle, and then you actually see the original 1998 Millennium Falcon prototype box art, and this is kind of what I'm talking about. Like, they showed this prototype, but not the Imperial Shuttle and AT-AT from the time, and we've seen this one. That's, again, part of the issue with a book like this is like you're getting some cool behind the scenes stuff, and there's some new stuff, we'll get there, but like something like this isn't new, you know, like I've seen this for 10 years. And this, frankly, is what I was hoping to see a lot more of in the book. This page specifically is very cool. And this is what I'm talking about when I want to see like prototype models and kind of the behind the scenes process of building a models. You get the sketch model, you get more sketch models, you can see the like lineage of how they got from point A to point B, how it could have looked, some of the styles it could have followed instead of what they ended up with for the Ray Speeder playset back in 2015. I just feel like seeing stuff like this with the nearly finished sketch models that you just never get to see otherwise is really what I wanted out of this book. And this is a page that definitely delivers on something that I wanted to see personally. Of course, a lot of this book still wants to cover the story of LEGO Star Wars and stuff, and it does a good job at that. But, you know, more behind the scenes stuff, the better, right? And this page specifically discusses developing sketch models. You can see our old friend there, the medical droid. We've got the UCS Vulture droid, which I would wager would never become a set. And apparently maybe a sketch model of the Mos Eisley Cantina, although it doesn't look all that different. And again, I love this page. I love what it talks about. It talks about some stuff that I've talked about in videos before with these older LEGO Star Wars polls. There's even more of them, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely a good one to call out there. Although they don't use all of the pictures that were provided with that poll. But again, these pictures have been on the internet for 20 years, and I was just kind of hoping for something fresh, a fresher insight on stuff like sketch models. Some of the more recent UCS sets have gotten like a sketch model of the Venator, a sketch model of the UCS AT-AT. I feel like there's just so much that's happened in 20 years, and we're still using the 20-year-old picture, and that's disappointing to me. You know, for $150, I just wanted to see something more there. So that's really all I have to say and show specific to this chapter. But yeah, it was a good chapter. The next chapter was Jedi, Sith, droids, and more. And I got a few notes on this. There were some cool things in here as you flipped through. There are some preliminary images of a Stormtrooper helmet. Kind of neat. Might enjoy that. But maybe even better, little Sebulba prototype, little prototype of the Tai Sen minifig from 2010, and then a very cool behind the scenes of the 2005 Revenge of the Sith clone helmet, which would have maybe been a 212 Trooper in orange, but they never released it in this color. Not necessarily something like crazy, but it's just a slightly different color variation that we never saw. The best page here is undoubtedly all of these prototypes of Jabba the Hutt. And unfortunately, they made one of them brown, and it looks suggestive, and we'll leave it at that. So we've got the Jabba and the Salacious Crumb all in one sketch here, and there's a lot of writing here that I can't read because it's in cursive and might not be in English. There's another very cool page here explaining some of the stylized look from the Clone Wars faces with a lot of different variations of the Anakin face there. The next page is pretty neat as it discusses a little bit of the origins of battle packs, but I do wish they had gone more into a timeline and talked more about the other battle packs that came out and some of the evolutions of battle packs over the years and some of the different versions that they've done that have been more expensive than maybe the original $10 ones. So definitely was looking for more out of a page like that, but still pretty cool to see some of the original history. And then this, for many people, might be like the highlight of the entire book, as you have this entire page of Admiral Akbar style figures, which is quite timely to be in this book, as the Akbar Trooper has been introduced into Star Wars lore via the Jedi Bob Starfighter. This page here is pretty great because it shows exactly how the minifig designers check their design versus what it's supposed to look like from the movie or show or whatever with their actual reference material, because they actually have to check it for accuracy. And you know that this is something they don't really do too much nowadays because, well, you've seen some of the figures from today. But this 2015 Endor Leia is a really good example. If they showed the 2023 version, well, you know. But yeah, I mean, obviously back in the day when times were as great as they were, they could do this and it would just look, you'd be like, oh yeah, they got that detail, they got that detail, they got that detail. Just could have used maybe dual molded legs. But, you know, the designers of today, maybe not so much. But, you know, who's to say? Oh, my favorite page, right? So this one explained why the minifig eyes are horrible. The design team strives for perfection, and apparently according to LEGO's guide for eyes, if it's a colored eye, it's not allowed to have pupils anymore like they used to when they actually looked good. So, yeah, I guess it's just going to be bad forever now. I don't know, man. Also, this is another picture that I'm pretty sure we've seen before in another book, but that's one of the original Chewbacca test like mold sculpts. I'm very glad they continued to evolve that into what they originally or ended up with for the early 2000s. But yeah, that one is very, very cursed. And the like extra long arms, like, ooh, I don't know about that. This is another very cool behind the scenes page. It shows some of the TT Games designs for figures that I guess we're just never going to get because it's for the game and not the actual physical product. But man, that would be a good Zam Wessel minifigure. And then I actually really like this. It's kind of a sheet talking about the figures that you can include in a set. So apparently there are required minifigs that they had to include. I don't know who requires them or if they just decide like these are the ones we are definitely going to have to include because they're the main characters, which like makes sense to me, but I don't know if it's like required by some higher entity. That's the point of what I'm trying to say. But they also mentioned that there's some optional characters, which we did end up getting at least a couple of them there that I see at first. I think we got some Jawas in there. There's a solid behind the scenes bit talking about some of the molded animals that we've had throughout the history of LEGO Star Wars, which was kind of cool. Some of the weapons and stuff. So I think this chapter generally is pretty good. And that brings us into the video game chapter, which might be the chapter I care the least about. But we'll see. Oh, wait, yeah. No, I like these. I forgot about these. These are very cool, like, drawings from the early years of LEGO Star Wars, the video games. And we've got the Padme, we got Boss Nass, and Taunwi, or Kamino, maybe more generally. I didn't really note much down for this chapter because it's just behind the scenes on, like, video game development, which isn't all that exciting to me personally. But it might just be for you. So, you know, there you go. I'll give you the good view of a lot of it. There's some good behind the scenes stuff in here. Certainly pretty cool side-by-side of the 2009 Venator versus the Venator that they used for the Skywalker Saga video game. And that brings us to the very cool Ultimate Collector Series page covered by the UCS Super Star Destroyer, which I think is quite fitting. It's a very good UCS set. And of course, they start out by talking about a couple of the original UCS sets and how, hey, adults might want LEGO Star Wars sets too. Would have thought that worked out pretty well. Here's Henrik. He designed the original TIE Interceptor and the newest UCS TIE Interceptor. Very cool, like behind the scenes write up about some of these original UCS sets in the order that they released, including that massive UCS Death Star. And reading about that 2002 UCS Naboo Starfighter reminded me of something that's going to make us all sad. I forgot I wrote this down on another piece of paper, but if we go back to page 82, you're not going to like this. They mentioned they created a sketch model for Queen Amidala's Naboo Royal Starship, and it was in chrome, but the concept didn't progress because the chrome elements were discontinued right after that, basically. So we could have had a chrome Queen Amidala's Starship in the early 2000s, but we didn't. And also, it could have been one of the pictures here, and that's why I'm complaining about it, because it just should have been a picture at the top here. They talk about it, but don't show it. And it's like, we paid $150 for this behind-the-scenes look. Show us what we want to see, right? I love that the UCS ATST gets some really great respect in this book because it definitely deserves a whole write-up. And it actually mentions the 2005 poll for a UCS set, which included the UCS ATST. I think it also had like Vader's tie and a few other options, including maybe Anakin's Jedi Interceptor. But what they don't mention is the set poll from LEGO Ideas for the UCS gunship. And I think that's disappointing. I think that's a disservice to your fans who were so excited about that set. They don't mention that there was a fan vote for it. Of course, the Millennium Falcon UCS set gets a few different pages here, and they give some backstory on how the original UCS Falcon came to be, which is pretty cool, known story, but still pretty cool to see and know if you don't know. UCS Star Destroyer's got its couple pages there, back to back. Here's some of the packaging for it, then the Super Star Destroyer there off to the right again, and then some behind the scenes pictures on the Star Destroyers, like photo shoot were pretty cool to me. I loved seeing that. And, you know, the physical photos were always a cool thing that they did for the box art. They don't really do like physical photos like that for the box art anymore. Now they're all like digital, which is, you know, kind of lame. But here's that massive UCS AT-AT. And again, this is like the pitfall of this book to me is a lot of the, oh, we'll tell you about how we had this prototype of a UCS AT-AT for so long, but we didn't take a picture of it? Yes, they did. Come on now. They've got pictures of this stuff. And so, you know, I love that they talk about it. There's some great behind the scenes information here. But again, the imagery, I think, is lacking for something like that. The Razor Crest, of course, gets a couple of its own pages, notably missing, of course. No UCS gunship or talk about that at all. The Venator gets kind of part of a page, but they don't talk too much about it. A lot of it's just, you know, one big quote, I believe. When it comes to capital ships, that size does matter, of course. Chapter 6 is getting animated. I did not take many notes on this, but it does talk about some very classic Lego Star Wars animations and stuff, and this again might be something that you find more interesting than me personally. Of course, it gets into some of the more modern Yoda Chronicles and the Freemaker Adventures in here. This is a cool thing. It's a brick-built C-3PO that they made for Anthony Daniels. Definitely something unique, and there's some more behind-the-scenes stuff on that Lego Star Wars Tonight thing that we saw a little bit earlier in the video, and I think I might have noted down one more thing. Oh yes, these terrifying tales movie posters are just fantastic. Like The Shining with Porgs is super funny. I was hoping this next chapter would also be quite interesting. As you can see, we're like 200 pages into the book, and like there's some good stuff, but like there weren't that many cool behind the scenes images. And so they've got a whole page on some of those early Lego Technic Star Wars sets, which is like really cool. Some of those were amazing, including the Droideka, which I actually recently experienced earlier this year. Nice behind the scenes picture of the droid commander's gonk droid there in white instead of the green color that it released in. And then perhaps one of the most interesting pages in the entire book here. We've known about these for a long time. The canceled Super Battle Droid and 501st Trooper with ATRT buildable characters. These were supposed to release in the summer of 2018, but the entire line was canned just before their release. And so now we actually have full quality images. We had some really blurry, confidential, watermarked images, but to actually see them in full quality is amazing. And unfortunately, the line ended just before we got to see the full greatness of the buildable character lineup. Now, I don't think it ever should have gotten to a point where these should have been even close to releasing. Frankly, the buildable character lineup, in my opinion, never really should have existed to begin with, but you know, maybe it's worth trying to rebuild this now physically that I can actually see it. So maybe we'll give it a shot one day, but that looks like a tall task. And I only have one other page noted down for this section. So as much as there is like text-wise, and there's some cool stuff you can read here, certainly, there's not a lot of cool imagery, behind-the-scenes stuff, you know, a bunch of Yoda faces, I don't know, baby Yoda faces. And then if we get a few more pages ahead here, you can see some behind-the-scenes on the Planet series, some behind-the-scenes on Microfighters, which was pretty cool. Looks like the influencer kit from 2018. I did not get one of those. And moving along here, there we go. One of the other cooler pages in the book to give us some more behind the scenes stuff. So of course, there's been a bit of discussion as to whether these are better or what Lego ended up releasing in these are better. And there were some people that tried to say these are better, and I don't see it at all. I think these, especially the Stormtrooper, looks horrendous. You know, you might not love what we have here, but to pretend this is better is crazy to me. But yeah, it's a interesting original concept for the helmet line. You can just see how big and bulky these bases were too, which is insane. Just how much money from the set would have gone into those bases, how kind of more UCS-esque the display plaques were versus the simplified final form. But I love this. This is the type of thing that I was hoping to see more of in the book, and it's certainly cool to see these. And I actually know that a prototype of this exists because we've seen it in the background of a video from 2022, but they don't put it in the book. So yeah, you know, again, so much missing imagery wise. Like it's got all the text there that you could probably ever want, but I don't know. This is a review, and whether or not you should spend $150 might depend on whether you think it's worth it to see some of the pictures in here as you scroll through sometimes or flip through. And I don't know, it gets us into our last chapter, building experience, with chapter 8. It talks about some of the big models that they make for like Legoland or Lego stores with Chewbacca, C-3PO. Definitely the coolest one they show off has got to be that Droideka replica that is amazing looking. I'd love to have one in my house. And then we get into a very cool piece of Lego Star Wars history that some of you guys might not know about, but there's this 2005 kind of Venator build here that they actually auctioned off, I think on eBay, but maybe it was on Lego.com, and it sold for $31,602. I don't know where it is now, but very, very expensive. 8-foot long UCS, but bigger Venator from 2005. Just insane. This buildable Jango Fett that Lego also auctioned on eBay, and it sold for $1,425 paired with the Jango Fett Slave 1. So pretty crazy. I actually have a pretty crazy buildable character of my own in the background there. That Yoda there is one of 3 made, but it wasn't auctioned on Lego.com, and it wasn't pictured or mentioned in the book. Kind of sad. This George Lucas bust is absolutely sick. And then on the very next page, they show some of the Captain Rex life-size model being built. The final chapter takes some time to highlight some fan builds, but it's also the sort of stuff you can already see online. So we'll skip ahead to the epilogue and into the timeline at the appendix, which is cool, but doesn't include pictures for everything. And I think this is the point in the video where I'll cut to, I kind of flipped through on camera just my original reaction of reading through the book in case I found anything just insane. And while I don't think I found anything completely insane, at the end of this book, inexplicably, some of these piece counts are just wrong. And as a big Lego Star Wars fan, I just noticed those sorts of things. So here's me realizing some of them are wrong. The Star Destroyer here, I'm just looking through, says it has 1,367 pieces. That's incorrect. I mean, I literally have the set right here. 1367, and it has, you can see 1366. So yeah, that's wrong. The turbo tank's just wrong. It's not 801-803, so that one's wrong. 3449. What are we doing? How are we getting these wrong? That's just wrong. Where are they getting these piece counts? Like I just literally walk out the door, look at my box, and the 2007 MTT I know doesn't have 1330 pieces, 1326. It's just wrong. Now, I didn't spend the time to check every single set in the back of the book and its piece count and whether or not it's like the correct piece count, but to have some like pretty big ones wrong in the MTT and UCS Death Star is kind of crazy to me. Like, it's not like it's difficult to check. Like, the pictures of these boxes are online. I don't know how it was wrong, but yeah, they basically got a list of every Lego Star Wars set released by year just without pictures, which I feel like it should have had pictures for $150 of every set just so you can really see the history of all of it ever, but it's just not something you're getting for $150. And I think the back page was pretty cool here. It shows, yeah, some of the contributors, but really what I wanted to show was the very, very, very back page where it has Jedi Bob on the end. So that's pretty cool and pretty fitting. So that ends my relatively quick flip through of the Force of Creativity book and kind of the highlights and lowlights of it, in my opinion. So many people scoffed at the $150 for this book when it was announced, and my frame of reference was an Apple design book from like 5 years ago that cost $300-400, and I figured this would be somewhat similar, but it's cheaper because it's not got the Apple branding on it, and I kind of was hoping for more on all that design process out of this book, and it didn't quite deliver there. But like, okay, so is it worth $150? The quality of the book, like the feel of it, the feel of the materials that it comes in, like everything feels and looks very nice. But if you're gonna spend so much money on a book, I was really hoping for a lot more visual representation about some of the stuff they were talking about. And I think that was pretty apparent during my kind of flip through explanation of some of the chapters and how I felt about them and whether they were good or bad. I also don't think there's anything included in the time capsule that you absolutely need to have. Is there some cool pieces of paper? Sure, but they're pieces of paper. And most of us collect Lego for the actual Lego, and there's not an actual like Lego figure, or I suppose a build could have been included too. So I feel like huge missed opportunity there for Lego Star Wars. And as a result, I already know pretty much for a fact this book is not selling very well at all. But I also personally wouldn't recommend it unless $150 to you is like the normal person equivalent to a small fry at McDonald's. I just don't see the value in this book for the average Lego Star Wars collector. That's what the visual dictionary is for. And I suppose this isn't for the average collector anyway. It is something above and beyond, but I don't feel like it went far enough above and beyond in the visual space. Like, I feel like they put in more pictures of people's mocks that I've seen online than actual behind the scenes Lego Star Wars designs that we've never seen before. And don't get me wrong, it's very cool that they did that, and I've even got some friends that were able to make it into this book, and so I think that's a really cool thing they did for the Lego Star Wars community. However, I also feel like if you're going to spend 24 pages doing that, you could have also given us 24 pages of canceled or prototype Lego Star Wars build images that we've just never seen before, because you know there's got to be a wealth of that stuff somewhere in Denmark, but it's not in this book. And that was a big thing I was hopeful for that would have maybe made this worth $150 to me. That's my 2 cents on it. I don't think you should spend $150 on it. Frankly, I think many people already know they're not going to spend $150 on it and didn't need to wait 37 minutes for me to say I don't think you should spend $150 on this book and time capsule, because it's frankly probably just not worth it. So this has been my review of the $150 Lego Star Wars The Force of Creativity book and accompanying time capsule written by Graham E. Hancock. You can check out more Lego Star Wars content on the end screen now.